Hey, everybody, it's your favorite game with me, Eric Switzer. But not just me, my two co hosts as well, George Foster
Hello.
and the gamer's editor-in-chief, Stacey Henley.
Hello, hello.
This week is your favorite game with, drumroll,
Dun, 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 dun.
Escort Missions.
Woo.
This is interesting because last week was your favorite game with zombies, a thing everybody loves.
Yes.
Everybody loves zombies. This week, your favorite game with escort missions, a thing everybody hates.
Yes. Famously so.
Now, I had no trouble at all finding my favorite game with escort missions. In fact, I had trouble, if anything, whittling it down to just a few to talk about. And yet, I think this is sort of a universally detested mechanic, often considered part of the olden days of video games, sort of an antiquated thing that's gone away because everybody hates it, or at least that's the common belief. What do you think about that?
I think it kind of goes a little bit both ways with that, doesn't it? Like, I think if this show was very negative and called our least favorite game, we could probably think of escort missions that we hate. I think the good ones kind of stand out. I also had a little bit of trouble whittling mine down, though, so there are some really strong ones, I think, out there. But I also feel like they used to be a way that you bloated up games, right? Like you had escort missions, you had fetch quests, you had those sorts of things. And they've kind of gone away. When we talk about open world bloat these days, which is still a thing that we discuss, we don't really think about escort missions things. We think about a map that's 10 times bigger than it needs to be, and you need to hunt these like 7 skins to make this belt. So I think games have just found new ways in which to kind of quite cheaply. I know games are very hard and difficult to make and cost a lot of money and stuff, but I think there's always been little corners you can cut of, we know how to make this type of thing and people enjoy it. And Escort Missions was one of those, like fetch quests, that I think were made over and over and over again to the point where the idea of them annoyed us more than the actual doing of it. You know, there's in 10 years' time, we're probably going to look back on, do you remember when we used to have to climb towers to clear the map? That was a laugh. But at the moment, we hate it because we're sick of doing it. And I think escort missions are probably that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've you two seem quite positive on it. I'm going to do a character reverse and say I actually don't really like escort missions at all. I found it hard to find one. Yeah, well, there we go. I'm still living in the days of them being bad, but I had a tough time. A tough time indeed. But there are some good ones. I think the struggle for me is looking after another character. If a character is just in your way for any kind of game, it's annoying. You don't want to think about it. It's the same reason people don't like the poison stats effect, reason people don't like timers. Yeah. That's how I feel about escort missions, generally. But there are good ones, and we will get to them.
Yes. We will be making the case for some good escort missions while also, I'm sure, acknowledging some of the bad ones. I do want to maybe push back on this narrative that they have gone by the wayside, because I can think of quite a few recent examples where escort missions are still very much alive. Dragon's Dogma 2 this year has escort missions.
That's true, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kunitsugami is a whole escort game.
Whole escort mission of a game, yep.
Yep. And revealed at Gamescom I played at PAX West was Herdlings, and that is also an escort game. Maybe it's a herding game. Maybe there's a subgenre of the escort mission, which is the herding mission. But I think that they're the same brand, different flavors.
I think that's probably it, though, isn't it? The different flavors. Like Dragon's Dogma, that's a classic escort mission. Like that is an escort mission in anyone's book. Kunitsugami is really interesting because I played it and you watched at Summer Game Fest, and we didn't really understand it at first. We were really like, so what do you move forward and then she moves forward? Like, we didn't really get it when we first played it. The more I played, the more I enjoyed it. But I think that's kind of doing something different with an escort mission, and obviously Herdlings is as well. And there's a few other games that I think will probably do things in different ways. I haven't played any of Dragon Age Civilization. I know you previewed a little bit of it, but all of the stuff that they're showing us with combat is like, oh, don't worry about your companions at all. Like, you don't control them anymore. You don't jump into them. And they seem to be like simplifying the idea of you at the hero of everything. So this is not based on anything that I've seen. I haven't even watched all of the footage that you've seen, but I imagine there's going to be bits in the Veil God that are leaning towards, he has a classic video game thing, but we've kind of done it fresh because we've got like a narrative spin on it. And I feel like that's what Escort Missions get these days. They're narratively important in a way that maybe they weren't previously.
I definitely want to get into kind of the evolution from the escort mission to the companion character.
Yes.
But before we dive too deep, let's start with our games.
Yes.
So, George, what is your favorite game with escort missions?
My favorite game with escort missions is BioShock Infinite. A game that is an escort mission in itself. The whole point of it is an escort mission. Now, I said earlier, I don't like escort missions generally because you have to look after someone, they're useless, they're always in your way, Ashley keeps getting trapped and stuff and dying, all that sort of stuff. BioShock Infinite is the first example where, to my mind, at least the biggest example, where your companion's actually helpful. You're not escorting so much as you're working with Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Like when she opens the portals, she throws you ammo. That was enough for me to enjoy it and to set it apart from any other kind of escort mission they've done at the time.
Yeah. George, I'm going to have to argue that BioShock Infinite is not an escort mission.
What? No. Why?
I think I tipped my hand too early here, but what you're talking about is a game with a companion. I think there's even I remember the beginning of BioShock Infinite because companions like Elizabeth were not super common at the time. And that game starts with a pop-up message that says, hey, don't worry about Elizabeth. She can take care of herself. To differentiate itself from an escort mission because you are not escorting her. She's not in danger. She can't die. She's a companion in the way that Atreus is a companion to Kratos, right? I don't think you would call that. Would you call God of War an escort game?
No, I guess you wouldn't.
Are they different?
Yes, I guess they are.
Are they? I'm not sure they are.
What, between Elizabeth and escort missions? Or did you mean God
Atreus and Elizabeth?
Oh, then different? No, not so much, no. I don't know why. Maybe that's a conversation to be had that BioShock Infinite was kind of the first one to do that. To my mind.
I don't know that it was, because there was another game that I consider that I didn't pick for this because I didn't think it was enough of an escort mission. Because I initially did think of companion-y games because I thought of BioShock Infinite, and a game that I very nearly chose for this, Enslaved Odyssey to the West, which does the same thing. And I really wanted to bring that today to say, but I just didn't feel it was in the spirit of an escort mission because it's the game.
Well, if we're doing a round of George being wrong, then I'll also say my secondary choice was The Last of Us, which I was like, that's a better game, but to even lesser degree of an escort mission because Ellie's really not that involved. She can sometimes get captured and hurt, but in my mind that counted less. Or does that count more and I'm just wrong?
I think it counts a little bit more, if I'm honest. The first one, I think The Last of Us counts a bit more, but I don't think it's a true escort mission either, no. Plague Tale, which does the Last of Us thing, is probably closer, but I wouldn't have that as my favourite of many things, really. Favourite game set in France with rats, maybe, would be Plague Tale.
Yeah. You know what? I think the best way to move forward is to actually jump to my game now. And we're actually going to circle back to George's game. This is all going to connect beautifully. No, nothing to worry about. This is all going to connect together beautifully.
Okay. What is your favorite game with escort missions, Eric?
My favorite game with escort missions is BioShock.
Oh,
which is and does have escort missions. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the proving ground. Maybe potentially the most hated escort mission in any game. We can debate this later, but the proving ground, allow me to remind you, is the penultimate mission in the original BioShock. This is where you are about to confront the final boss, but before you do, you have to make your way through the museum and the atriums and all the surrounding areas around the museum in a Big Daddy suit, escorting a little sister. And there's a lot of really fascinating things about this mission. First of all, the rest of BioShock up until this moment is like a reverse escort mission, because the enemy is on an escort mission and you are the attacker, right? You are pursuing the VIP, the little sisters, and the character on the escort mission is the Big Daddy, and they're trying to protect the little sisters. And then in this moment, this proving ground sequence, it reverses it. It's a great set piece moment for the game in a few ways. One, I think the museum is a really cool environment for BioShock because it's this like visual representation of the loss of knowledge. The museum is all of their achievements, all of their advancements that they had as this like superior society, and now it's like covered in dead bodies and flooded, and it just shows the descent of Rapture. As an escort mission, it is everything that people hate about escort missions. It's the little sisters are really slow. They are very stopping slow, together. Very weak. They stop to gather Adam like constantly. And then you have to protect them. There's no reason for them to stop. In fact, they don't even have the parasite anymore. So they don't even need to do that. And they explain that it's just like their conditioning. They're just like still
learned behavior.
Yeah. They just feel the need to do it. Which makes it even more frustrating, right? When they do it for no reason. Like you're trying to get to the last boss. So it's like this big roadblock that slows you down so much. And then you have to like stand there and protect them when you've spent the whole rest of the game, hunting them down, either saving them or killing them. But in any event,
saving them, surely.
Sure, maybe.
Don't you want that bonus? Don't you want those plasmids, whatever they were called?
You got a trophy or an achievement. I played on the 360. You got an achievement for not killing any of them.
I'm sure you got one for killing all of them as well, though.
Did you? Maybe.
Yeah,
I bet.
One.
Yeah. That trophy, it does not matter if these little sisters die, the ones you're escorting.
No, yes, that's true, yeah.
In fact, it doesn't matter at all if they die. If they die, another one will just crawl out of the vent, and you'll just move forward with them. So that's a nice, like, I think one of the things people really hate about escort missions is when your VIP gets killed and you fail the mission and then have to restart. This one has no fail state. You just continue to move forward. And then that sort of leads directly to the sequel where you are
a Big Daddy.
A Big Daddy, right? So it kind of feels like that idea, the proving ground sequence was so compelling. They built an entire game based on that. Now in the second one, it's not, the little sister rides on your shoulder. Like you don't have to lead them around.
It's more like an escort mission in the way that Infinite is an escort mission.
Yes. And then, yeah, exactly. And then the third BioShock becomes a companion game. So you see that evolution from the escort mission to the companion game.
My opinions are just more evolved. I'm just on another level.
More advanced.
Yeah, I'm just thinking further ahead.
I think you were just trying to dodge the escort mission because you actually just hate them so much. You didn't want to give credit to a real legit escort mission.
Now we've talked about it more. My other answer would be Dead Rising, and I don't want to do that twice in a row, so I won't go into it too much. But that game is also all escort missions, and they're
real escort missions. Yeah, they would be a really good one actually. Yeah,
they are. I just didn't want to do it twice. It did come into my head, but I was like, I don't want to be the Dead Rising guy anymore than I am. But that game is those escort missions are torturous. They are hell. They are everything wrong with escort missions, but they're so good to overcome. And when you do learn how they're supposed to be done, when I first played it, it was just follow me. You don't arm them up. You don't even heal them. It's like if you die, you die. And that was always annoying. I was always like, oh, these are really hard because I wasn't doing anything with them. And then as I've done it since, you're supposed to look after them, supposed to lead them properly, clear the way. Learning that and overcoming that made them really satisfying. They're like a key part of
it changes the way you play, I think.
Yeah,
it
100%.
moves you away from the kind of stuff I was talking about at the start, the kind of the very self-centered, I am the hero, I will drink a health potion and I'll be fine. I know it's not drinking about health potions in Dead Rising, you know what I mean? Moves it away from that kind of thing into actually protecting people. And I think that's probably actually where the distinction between a real escort mission and a companion game comes from. Because in Enslaved Odyssey of the West and BioShock Infinite, and The Last of Us, actually, it's if you do something. My memory's a little fuzzy on if Ellie can actually die of her own accord, or whether it's not just if you do something.
She can get grabbed by clickers, and then you just...
the hotel sequence, actually, yeah.
Yeah. You have to save her or Tess at certain points, but
that's so there's rare. The Last of Us not as much, but certainly Infinite and Enslaved Odyssey of the West are kind of, you figure out on your own and someone's there to help you and you work with them. Which I think is a different kind of game, but I will admit they instantly came to mind for me when we decided we're going to do escort missions this week.
And I had a good answer in the end, but I have to ask Stace, what's your favourite game with escort missions?
So my favourite game with escort missions is actually Borderlands 2.
Gross.
What?
I thought pretty hard about this because all of the ones, as I said, that came to mind were companion games. They were longer. The whole game is someone by your side. So I started thinking of the reverse. What's a game with a bunch of different missions in, like a whole array of different types of missions, which includes doing an escort mission? It's a little bit different to Eric, so it's kind of an evolution of the story. Borderlands is kind of, you wander around and someone says, do a thing, they say a joke from a meme from like 7 years ago, and you do it. Borderlands has got two escort missions. Borderlands 2, has got two escort missions that I remember. And I'm not sure if I'm going to like Borderlands 4. I didn't like the movie. I feel like maybe his Borderlands time has just kind of come and gone. I didn't really like the D&D one.
Your
but
taste
I really loved the first. Probably, yeah. But I really loved the first two. I liked the pre-sequel. I liked the first Tales of the Borderlands. And I've got a lot of time for 3. Like, I just have to admit to myself that I like this series. And the kind of silly little bits of things I have to do is probably a big part of that. It's kind of a sandbox in the way that GTA is, but with a little bit more structure to the side stuff that you do. So anyway, the escort mission. There's two that I can remember. The first one is when you meet Brick in the game. First time you meet him, I can't remember why, but he's busy doing something, so you need to like escort him on his way. And it's just basically a lesson in trying to survive the hordes that kind of rush at you, which is obviously a big part of Borderlands. And I liked that they had merged this idea of surviving in the wilderness to actually, giving it a narrative purpose. And I think the thing that annoys me with escort missions is when it's kind of like the Little Sisters, just impossibly weak people who are just kind of there to die. And that's not the case with the Borderlands one. Like, I can't remember all of the details on exactly why he's incapacitated and needs your help at that moment, but it's a very kind of specific, situational need for an escort mission, which makes it less annoying than... we haven't discussed it. I'm sure we will as we get on to kind of iconic escort missions. But, in Resident Evil 4, save me, Leon! Like, yeah, I get it. Yeah. Someone had to say it. So, yeah, I really like the way that Borderlands does it because it's something that you kind of dip in and out of as opposed to it being like a blockade on your progress. And it doesn't get in the way of the main story. And I think when escort missions are tied to the main story, that's usually when they become a little bit frustrating because they kind of grind your pace to a halt.
Right.
And I think the way Borderlands does it by moving it off to the side just makes it a bit of a, I guess, stronger version of what Borderlands does. Because Borderlands' whole thing is we're a looter shooter, right? So you get different guns, got different types of damage. And then when you speak to random people will become a different game for a little while. Like the most obvious one is Tiny Tina doing the whole tabletop adventure, but even other stuff, like they become different sorts of games. They become platform challenges. They have this kind of escort mission. They have this tower defense element to it at times. They become like gladiatorial. They have just lots of cool things like that I think make it... Of its era, it felt very varied and interesting. I'm not sure how much it would stand up to the need for a cinematic experience that AAA games seem to have now. I think it would fail at doing that. I didn't really like the second Tales of the Borderlands. But...
I did.
It's
I did like that.
No, nowhere near as good as the first one. I didn't hate it. But it's always a series that I'm going to defend. And when I stripped away all the companion games, Borderlands 2 was just kind of flashing in my head of, this is the one.
That's a surprising pick. And I hadn't really thought... My instant thought with Borderlands is same as Eric's, and I hate it, and get away from me, stop talking. But I did used to like 2, and the first one as well. And variety, now you've mentioned it, variety is something they excel in, not even in just the amount of guns you get, and each time you get a new one, what can that do? But you're constantly changing what you're doing. Even mid-mission, when a character is so stupid and funny, you'll just swap. You'll be like, you're doing this now.
Name to it.
Of course, it's Borderlands, of course it does.
Yeah, that is definitely the charm of Borderlands. And I also agree that maybe that charm is worn off. When you were mocking Ashley, it reminded me about what the Little Sisters say in Improving Ground. Do you remember their line that they say over and over and over?
No, but impersonate it for me.
They go, "Come on, Mr. B, angels don't wait for slowpokes."
I don't remember that at all.
Which is so infuriating.
I don't even remember the last half of BioShock, to be honest.
Oh, okay. It's just so infuriating because they're being the slow ones, obviously. Cool. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the different kinds of escort missions, and why they have such a bad reputation. And maybe we'll get into some more examples. There's kind of like, I think, 2 different versions of the traditional escort mission. There's the predetermined path, the fixed path, where a character is moving along, they can only go one way, and you are trying to keep up with them and protect them. And then there's the AI, which is a character that follows you or reacts to what's happening around them. And I think between the 2, that's the more hated one because of sort of how stupid AI characters used to be.
Yeah. It's the fact that doesn't really work. Like the original Ashley, not so much the remake, is probably the worst for this of all the characters. They run past you, they get in your way. You can't really see what you're doing because they're kind of running into the wall and then realizing they can't go that way and running into the wall. And I think that kind of adds to the carnage of it, and it reminds you that you're in a video game, really. Like, I don't necessarily go in for the whole kind of, you need to be immersed in a game. But it is one of those things where if you're in kind of, deathly danger, and you die 7 times, you don't really feel in deathly danger anymore. You just feel annoyed.
Yeah.
And I think escort missions kind of add to that because you stop thinking of them as a kind of... you stop thinking of them as being your obligation. You stop caring about keeping Ashley safe, and you just think, like, I don't care if you die. Yeah, I'm happy that you're dead. You deserve that.
Yeah,
take that. Yeah. And I think that changes things, which is probably why. I know you're saying you don't feel games haven't written, but I think why they've been changed into more narrative entities to avoid that kind of death means nothing.
I would like to speak out on behalf of the fixed path being the worst choice. Psychonauts, the Meat Circus level, one of the worst finales in a game ever. You have, for those who haven't played it, fix that mistake, go play it. But the final level is this twisted circus combined with a butcher shop meat thing. It's notorious and bad. And the worst bit of it is when you have to rescue someone called Oleander. And he's like this little kid that's like moved around slowly as can be, and he's jumping between platforms, and there's enemies coming at you every time. And even if you commit to memory where he's going, what he's doing, how he's going to react, because he's on a strict path, it's still hell. He'll still stop randomly. He'll still just get hit by random stuff. It's the worst. So I'd rather have AI any day.
I want to talk about Resident Evil 4. I always want to talk about Resident Evil 4. This one's really interesting because it's kind of the quintessential escort mission. I think that's maybe the first one that's going to come to most people's minds, and also sort of, and therefore the most hated. Not necessarily the worst, but because it's the
it's the most infamous.
But I actually think it does so much to improve on what people hated about escort missions. Ashley takes cover on her own.
Yes.
She tries to get out of danger. She can be commanded to like stay back or hide. And in the original, not so much in the remake, interestingly, but in the original, there's tons of places for her to hide. You can put her in a box or in a refrigerator, or like you can take her out of the fight completely.
I'd forgotten all that stuff because I obviously played the remake pretty recently when it came out last year. I think we both agreed it was a innovation on what was already pretty good, pretty great. I had forgotten that actually, but I also didn't find myself annoyed by Ashley in the remake. Maybe it's just kind of nostalgia of liking Resident Evil too much to get annoyed by it, but I don't feel it missed that in the new one, even though typically the new one was adding elements that kind of enriched the game. It didn't take a lot away.
In the original, you could get a suit of armor. Put her in a suit of armor.
Yes.
It was like one of the
I think you can
rewards.
remake as well.
Can you?
Yeah.
I think I think
it's just aesthetic in the new one.
In
the original one, it would stop her from getting killed and kidnapped and stuff. I think the hate really comes down to just hate for her personality. Just like
people didn't like Ashley.
Yeah, she's just sort of like shrill and annoying, right? And then there's that one mission where she's up on that platform and there's guys coming at her from either side, and you got to take on you. All you can do is stand there and shoot them all, and then the guys are coming at you too. So you got to shoot it's like right at the beginning of the castle, or maybe like midway.
It's
through the castle. Yeah,
I was just gonna say I didn't think Ashley was that bad in the original. I think it's overblown. You can just get her to stop at the start of each area and then just do your thing. But actually, that whole bit, awful.
Yeah,
it's
that
interesting
one level.
How people reacted to it this time, though, because I don't know if it's partially because there's a wider range of I was going to say demographics there. I hear that word. A wider range of just age groups and people playing games. I don't know if it's because everyone kind of knew Ashley was hated, so people had a lot of sympathy for her. But it feels like there was a lot more affection for Ashley with the remake. Obviously, that Mousely Graham was a really big thing when it came out. People drawing her as this little kind of shrill, cute little mouse. It didn't seem to be as pronounced. People were still annoyed, and I think she changed her skirt into a skirt, and that was woke. And there was all that kind of silliness. But generally, I feel like the reception to Ashley was warmer in the remake.
Absolutely.
I wonder if that's because there's less kind of a lads mag culture to video games these days, or if there is something different about how this game plays, or how generally we play games these days that makes this damsel in distress less of an irritant. Because I think she's quite a popular character, I would say, in the new one. Especially compared to the hate that Ada got, which was completely flipped traditionally.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that also sort of comes back to performance and personality. More than gameplay and mechanics. Speaking of hated, I have a couple of I think the worst examples, and I think George will relate to some of these.
Yes.
Okay, first one. The prisoners from Infamous. Not ringing a bell. Okay, if you play on the good path, then some of the side missions involve escorting prisoners across the city.
Don't you have to shock them to make them go faster?
You have to shock them to make them go faster.
God.
And so not only do you have to protect them and escort them across the city, they will occasionally just break out. They'll just like take a run for it, and you have to like
electric handcuffs,
rally them back in. Yeah, with the electric handcuffs. Yeah, miserable. Although on the evil path, there's a mission. I can't remember one of the supervillains, where you have to escort him across the city so you can blast him into the bay. That's a good one.
Yeah, I don't remember that one. The prisoners do ring an awful bell. Now you said it.
This one might be before your time. Jack 2, the little kid.
Jack 2. Yeah.
Oh
Jack
my
himself.
God.
Awful.
That's the worst one. That's
really tough as well.
One. So hard.
Jack 2 as a whole is full of missions that are just like unplayable now.
Yeah,
I would say.
Jack 2 is a hard game, but this you gotta take this little kid all the way across the city, from the like docks, from the slums, or to the slums from the opposite end of the map, and he's like skipping along the whole time, and everything's trying to kill you, and it's horrible, so hard. There's an interesting way that escort missions, we talked about how they evolved into companions, but they've also like stretch into other genres. I mean, Overwatch has a mode called Escort. Right? Where you are escorting a payload. That's sort of a common multiplayer game trope. I forgot another one that's horrible. Sorry. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. You have to escort Princess Peach. It's like the ice area, and the bad guys will pick her up and carry her away, and she'll be like, Mario, and then you have to walk like 4 screens back the other way.
Should be like what?
Mario.
There we go.
Mario. Yes. The type of escort missions like we were talking about, where there's a fail state or where it like resets your progress, because they're already sort of slow and tedious, but then when you fail and you have to do a slow, tedious thing over and over again.
I think, the crux of them. When they make the game slower, like you are forced to go at a certain pace. And I almost think with like Escort the Payload, and the single player games do have a version of that as well. Like somebody is shielded, needs to be protected or whatever. I almost think they are a little bit more tolerable, because they either move at a consistent pace, or they have that thing where the closer you are, the more they'll move. If you go too far away, they stop moving. Mm-hmm. It's the other ones where it's... I think we haven't really mentioned this. This was always like the old trope of they go too slow for you to walk, but too fast for you to run. That was always the thing that these escort missions used to have, where you had to kind of run a bit ahead and then stop and wait for them. Even the ones that weren't necessarily combat-based. Assassin's Creed had a lot like that, which we're going to pick, and I thought I don't want to talk about this because I hate them all. They had a lot of missions that weren't necessarily about being in peril very often. They were often, instead, like introducing you to new places that you could climb up and stuff. But you would always be like, okay, run, hide in some hay.
Yeah.
Wait. And I think the way that they changed the pace, there was obviously someone somewhere who was saying, well, we need to, change things up. This is what the gamers want. They want to be like, they want to be tested intellectually and have different... That's not really what people want. Yeah, like, right. I think it's a pretty shallow way to like change up the action in the game, to just say we're going to make this bit really slow and boring so the fast, exciting bits seem faster and more exciting. Like, it's just not a winning strategy long term.
Yeah, that's reminds me of my favorite Beavis and Butthead joke. I think about all the time. They're watching the music video for Creep, and Butthead's like, "How come parts of this song suck?" And Beavis is like, because then it makes the other parts rule. You have to have some parts that suck to make the other parts rule. Maybe that's true for games too. Yeah, I think Assassin's Creed definitely is one of the most escort mission heavy, the most connected to the idea of escort missions. The other one is Zelda. I think every single Zelda game has an escort mission of some form. And the best one in any Zelda game is in Breath of the Wild. There is a shrine that you cannot find. You have to follow a Korok to it. He's going on a pilgrimage to the shrine, but he can't, if he sees you, he won't go. So it's an escort mission in the sense that you have to protect him as he crosses the map, but it's also a stealth mission. It's also a follow mission. So it's like a stealth escort mission, and it is so cool. It's annoying,
none of that's selling it. It takes a lot to sell in Breath of the Wild anyway, but
yeah, it takes those two kinds of missions that are so annoying, the like stealth following missions and the escort mission, but somehow when it does both of them at the same time, it's actually really cool.
I can imagine it were, and I know I'm not the biggest fan of Breath of the Wild, but I do think it does a lot of really cool mechanical things, and it does it mainly by doing old things in a fresh way. I don't actually think there's that much that's that new in Breath of the Wild, or Tears of the Kingdom a little bit more because it's got the kind of the crafting and stuff. But I think in Breath of the Wild, there's not that many mechanics that are new. It's like, everyone now copies Zelda. You can glide and climb walls. Like, Zelda didn't invent those things, but it did them in a way that made them feel mechanically ingenious.
Yes,
and I think there's a lot of, particularly Breath of the Wild, that takes standard game tropes and imagines what if it didn't suck, basically. So I don't have trouble believing that a really in-depth escort stealth mission is actually good.
I do, and I like Zelda. Breath of the Wild. That does not sound good to me. Sorry.
I like when the trope is subverted. I have a couple more examples. Probably my favorite one of all time from Metal Gear Solid 2, when you have to escort Otacon's sister, Emma. And Emma is the worst.
Is that the swimming bit?
She can't get wet, so she has to ride on your shoulders because she's afraid of water. She's afraid of bugs, so you have to like cryo freeze the bugs on her path. And then, of course, if the guards see her, they're like, "Here's a threat," and they will start shooting at you. So it is like every annoying thing in an escort mission, but Kojima, go figure. You can just hit her over the head and just carry her there and not worry about any of that stuff. It's so funny. You can just knock her out. You can just shoot her with a dart.
I didn't know you could do that.
Carry her where you're going, and you don't have to worry about any of that annoying stuff. It's so good. It's so good.
That came to mind, but not in a good way. I didn't know you could do that though. That would have been been a good one.
You're supposed to. Yeah. Another good subversion, not quite as clever, but there's a Monster Hunter Worlds side mission. It's called The Best Kind of Quest, and it's an escort mission. But the joke is that it's a little Linian, like a little tiny guy. He's a researcher, and you have to take him out into the field because he wants to study monster poop or whatever. But the joke is that the monsters won't attack him at all. Like, he can't get hurt. He's not in danger. So you're just fighting stuff that's trying to kill you, which is what happens in any Monster Hunter mission. Like, there's no real escort that you can even like leave him and like come back later. It doesn't matter. So it's like kind of a joke on the escort mission. That one always makes me laugh.
Capcom as a whole has said they know escort missions. Like we've mentioned them countless times.
Yeah.
In this, so like for them to make fun of it as well, I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
I think Capcom are just quite classic game devs, really. Like, I know they do a lot of stuff that's wrong because like modern game studios do, because there's so much, money management going on. But I think generally Capcom is probably like still plugged into what I would say is traditional game development. Like, they seem to like have the craft for, we're going to do numerical sequels, we're going to have distinct levels. They don't really get too caught up in trend chasing as much as we see like Sony establishing the Sony way. And I'm sure they've got some live service stuff, and they do a lot of stuff to make money.
Exoprimal.
Yeah, that's
even that wasn't that bad.
Complete grenade to my entire argument with Exoprimal. But yeah, I've always I guess I just admire what Capcom does. I just think they're
Yeah.
Of all the companies that I have affection for, which is very few because it's foolish to get attached to offices that make millions of dollars a year, I just like Capcom's vibe.
Me too. Huge Capcom head. Also, I think if we're talking about Escort Missions, we have to talk about XCOM. I know neither of you are big XCOM heads.
No,
not at all.
But the VIP missions in XCOM are infamous. You've got a bunch of businessmen, civilians, whatever. Yeah, that you need to take them from here to there, and it's a turn-based tactics game. So they're standing out in cover while an alien is right next to them, aiming at their heads, or they won't come with you. Like, it's all the annoying things about a real-time game, but now you're doing it in turns. So you're just staring at your screen like, why would you stand there? Like, why won't you move? It's horrible. Any other big ones we haven't touched on yet?
No, when we were doing or when I was thinking of which ones to pick, as I say, the ones that came to mind to me were a lot more companion games. It surprised me that there were a couple of series that I really liked that I couldn't remember doing Escort Missions, which is probably something in itself. But I can't remember I can't remember there being one in Red Dead Redemption 2. I was thinking that would be a good one to try, but I just couldn't remember there being one at all. There's a lot of games I think are kind of moving away from them.
It seems like there would be somewhere in
there
Red
probably
Dead.
is. Yeah. Someone in the comments can let us know. But I couldn't remember. I've got 200 hours in that game across a couple of different runs, and I couldn't remember one.
Yeah.
I'm sure when I think of my 3D platformers like Rayman and Crash and Spyro, I'm sure some of the later ones have some kind of escort mission, but I can't imagine them being good.
Spyro has got some, actually. We've got clear Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah.
Is kind of an escort mission in the second one, right?
Yeah.
Or the third one. The second time you meet Hansel and Gretel, which is the third game.
We talked briefly about the escort maps in Overwatch, but on that same thread, the hostage maps in Counter-Strike. It's a competitive multiplayer escort mission, which is funny because you never escort the hostages. You just shoot them as soon as the game starts and then play team deathmatch. That's the correct way to play hostage in Counter-Strike.
I feel between that and the Metal Gear story, I think you would be bad at escorting someone.
Yeah.
I'm just a slave to the meta. That's the problem. Yeah. Cool. I think we've covered the escort missions. Hate them or love them, they're never going away, really. I think that's what we've discovered today. Any final takeaways?
I have learned a lot about companions and escorting.
That's it for this episode. Those were our favorite games with escort missions, but what's your favorite game with escort missions? Leave us a comment down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell, and visit us at thegamer.com. That's The Gamer, no spaces.